government starts to push palm production. Okay, and the way to push palm production was to give subsidies to coca farmers in order to replace coca plantations for palm plantations, but not only to coca farmers. They were giving subsidies and to palm farmers in order to get new lands in Colombia. So what you have here is that you have a very high demand shock and actually a very strong support from the government. Okay. Why is important palm in Colombia? The first thing of palm oil is that it has very specific characteristics. And the first thing is that the one with the largest yield among all oils. So the yield for palm oil is about 3.7 tons per hectare, while, for example, sunflower, which is the next one on the list, is only 0.76 tons per hectare. So it's for far the one with the highest yield among the oils. But it needs very specific temperatures, altitude, and rain. And that's why, let me show you this here. Palm is only produced in very specific regions. So you have the north of South America, which is mainly Colombia and parts of Brazil. But the big area of palm production is Malaysia and Indonesia. Okay. Why these areas? Because they do have the temperatures and the rain for palm production. So what is important for palm oil? Palm oil only grows in altitudes less than 500 meters above the sea level, and it needs an average temperature of 26 to 28 degrees Celsius in the median per year, and actually it cannot go below 15 degrees Celsius in a given period. Okay, so that makes the palm production not only specific around the world, but also specific around Colombia. So in Colombia, this is a map of where palm production was in 2002. So these are the green areas. The purple areas or blue areas here are the areas in Colombia that you can actually not cultivate African palm because they are all above 500 meters above sea level. Okay, so what we're going to explore is like within the regions that can crop palm, the difference between palm producers and non-palm producers with respect to FID rates. Okay. Something that is also interesting about the palm oil expansion, which is not only in Colombia, but what, as I was saying, was in Malaysia and Indonesia, is that it's linked with a lot of problems. First, there is a lot of evidence of environmental conflicts, basically because palm is land intense. There is a lot of problems of deforestation in jungles, principally in Malaysia, in order to produce or in order to increase the area of palm production. There is also evidence of labor conflicts, basically because this is the palm areas are usually in rural areas with very weak institutions. The landlords are able to set very poor contracts for workers, and that ended up sometimes in violence, not only in Colombia, but in only parts of the world, especially in Malaysia. But there is one specific problem linked with palm oil, that's the one that we want to exploit, and is the property rights conflict. Okay, so basically, as I said before, palm production is strong in areas with weak institutions. That includes weak land property rights. So that's being documented not only in Colombia, once again, that a lot of like big landowners are able to get over the lands of small farmers in order to increase palm production. Okay, and this is for our case the main channel that we are going to explode. I want to do it with time. Okay, I'm doing well. Okay. So that was the palm expansion. Now let's talk about forced internal displacement in Colombia. So Colombia is actually the second largest country with respect to forced internal displacement, just after Syria. So the estimates are that around 5.7 million individuals have been displaced over the last 25 years of conflict. That's around 20% of the population, so 14 to 15% of the population. And if you see this figure, the top of the displacement was just before the palm expansion, was 2002. So you have an increased trend between 1993 to 2002. By 2002, you have that almost 800,000 individuals were displaced in 1 year. But if you, that's the blue line. But if you see the confidence interval, you can see that for some municipalities, and this is the right axis, for some municipalities the rate was just below 10,000 individuals per every 100,000 individuals. So you have some municipalities that around 10% of the population was lost in a given year. After 2002, you have a decreasing conflict and also a decreasing forced internal displacement rate. Nevertheless, the rates never go to zero. Okay, so what is the hypothesis of our paper? Our hypothesis is very simple. We said that the rise in the expected returns from palm crops increased the need for new lands. Now, under weak institutions, it was better to use violence to reduce the price of land by displacing small farmers than buying at market price. So this is our main hypothesis. So we want to link income shocks to palm producing municipalities with forced internal displacement, specifically in those areas where you could displace small farmers. Okay. So before I explain my estimation strategy, let me just put some definitions. So first, the forced internal displacement rate. So we are going to have all municipalities in Colombia for a period from 2002 onwards. And we are going to define the forced internal displacement rate as the number of displaced individuals, so these are expulsions, for a given municipality in a given year over the total population in 2001. So just the year before the palm expansion started. So we fixed population in 2001 because in some municipalities, actually the calculations for population changed because because forced internal displacement was very strong in a given year. Okay. The second thing that is important for our analysis is that we are going to separate our analysis in two periods, 2002-2007 and 2008-2014. And the reason for this is two. The first one is that from 2002 to 2007, there was a peace process with paramilitary armies. And that process ended up in 2007. So from 2011 onwards, even though you still have some illegal groups, small illegal groups with a lot of local power, the paramilitary organization itself disappeared. And as I'm going to show you, these paramilitary armies, and it's been documented, were the main violent actor behind the link between palm expansion and violence in some regions. Okay, so that's why we divide 2002 to 2007, 2008 to 2014. The second one is that actually we have the international price of palm oil, and basically from 2002 until 2007, Colombia didn't have any use of biodiesel. So they were not exporting biodiesel, they were only exporting palm oil for food consumption. From 2008 onwards, actually biodiesels start to gain a lot of share within the Colombian palm production. Therefore, we are expecting that the effect of the palm oil price is stronger from 2002 to 2007 than 2008 and onwards. And I'm going to show you evidence that actually the biodiesel price do not have an effect, but I'm gonna explain that later. Okay, is that clear? I don't know if there are any questions before I show my estimation strategy. Okay. So the estimation strategy is very simple. So we are going to follow Dubé and Vargas and others. And this is a kind of difference approach. So first, we define the forced internal displacement for the municipality I at GRT. And that's going to be a function of CI. So CI is equal to 1 if the municipality has palm crops before the expansion. Okay. So as Andres and Kugler and others have used before, we are going to set the treated group as those municipalities that have palm before the expansion. Okay, so before the shock. And the idea is that, and it's the same idea of Andres and Kugler, if there is a positive or negative shock, those municipalities that already have the characteristics and they were already in the market are most likely to be affected by the shock that those municipalities that did not have, that were not treated in the past. In our case, did not have any palm crops before 2002. Okay.
Sorry, I have a question. Do you mind to take a question from me?
Yeah, sure, please.
Yes, the question is, you are assuming that once the army or whoever is taking the place of displacing the farmers, once the army or a company of the army decides to expel the farmers, they actually are successful doing this. But do farmers actually try to protect themselves against this eventuality? Do they raise also guerrillas or something?
So, I don't have evidence that the farmers itself create their own groups of protection. And as far as my knowledge goes, like for what I read, there is no evidence specific of those farmers like creating their own guerrillas. This is a point where the Colombia conflict was actually very well developed, if you want to say. So the paramilitaries were very strong in some areas, but also guerrilla forces were very strong in some areas. And I actually going to show you that this effect does not happen where guerrilla forces are. It actually happens specifically where paramilitary forces are. Okay. So my evidence goes, and maybe you can ask me again when I show you the evidence from the influence of paramilitary armies. My evidence goes in the direction that actually there was no reaction from these small farmers. Okay, my evidence shows that actually the effect of like scaring people through violence worked really well and worked over the period that the paramilitaries were active, and then after the paramilitaries left, actually, even though you still have some positive shocks in some prices, you don't find the same effect anymore. Did I answer your question?
Yes.
Okay. Thanks. So I continue. So once again, the idea of the paper is that we are going to set the treated municipalities as those who were treated before the expansion, so before the positive shock. Coming back to Marcelo's point, in that sense, we are thinking about the intensive margin. So we are capturing how much violence was driven the expansion within municipalities that already have palm production. Okay, then we multiply this by the price of the international price of palm oil with 1 period lag. We add a bunch of time-varying municipality characteristics, and we actually add GR fixed effects and municipality fixed effects. So what does alpha 1 capture? So alpha 1 is going to capture the differential increase over the municipalities with palm trees before the expansion due to a rise in palm oil prices. Okay, so what we're saying is that taking into account what was the dynamic within municipality with respect to forced internal displacement, so which was the violence dynamic within every municipality, what we are capturing is how that dynamic changes marginally or when the price of palm increases in those municipalities that already have palm. Okay, so once again, what we are capturing is the effect of the intensive margin of the palm expansion, because we are analyzing the effect of municipalities that already have palm, then instead of the extensive margin, which was the movement of palm farmers to new municipalities. Okay. Later on, I'm going to show you that actually this is the intensive margin is stronger than the extensive margin, and this goes again with the idea that actually palm is only profitable when you have very large areas of land. Okay. Obviously, for identification, what I need is that Colombia has no power to affect palm oil international prices. So even so, from 2002 to 2007, the share of Colombia has increased in the world. By the end of the period, Colombia doesn't account more than 2% of the international production. So 85% of the international production is Indonesia and Malaysia. Okay, so they are the ones who are leading the prices. Actually, the international price is their price in London. So we are very confident that actually Colombian production does not affect international prices. Okay. Now, if this is a kind of difference in difference approach, what we need is a control group in which the common trends assumption hold. Okay. So this graph shows the evolution of forced internal displacement for palm producing municipalities, which is the yellow line, and no palm producers, which is the blue dotted line. Okay. And as you can see, because the evolution of forced internal displacement is not similar between palm and non-palm producers. Okay, so in that sense, what we want is to constrain those controlled municipalities for a group that looks alike to the palm producing municipalities before 2002. So the first thing that we did is
Jaime,
yes.
Just a quick clarification question of your equation. So in the last slide, the lockup price, should we interpret as the effect of the level price or the change of price on the displacement?
So the way to read the coefficient alpha 1 is that 1% increase in the price in, for example, 2003 increases by, and I'm going to standardize my FID rates, alpha 1 standard deviations, the FID rate in a given municipality.
Okay, so it's the effect of the change.
Yeah.
On the change, but not on the change or on the level of displacement?
No, it's on the level of displacement. Sorry. FID is on the level of displacement. FID
okay.
RIT. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
Okay. So you have so the second thing is that we constrain municipalities to only the departments, so what you call states, where you have palm crops before. So we take out of the analysis all those departments that didn't have any palm before 2002 in order to compare municipalities with their closer neighbors. But even when you do that, the rates before 2002 do not look alike. Okay. So then we use the characteristics of palm, and then we reduce our comparison group to those municipalities that were in the departments of the municipalities that were treated before 2002 and actually have lands below 500 meters above sea level. In that sense, what we are saying is that we are going to compare you not with all your close neighbors, but with your close neighbors that have lands in which palm production can happen. Okay, and when you constrain your control group in this way, then you can see that the trends between the trends of forced internal displacement before 2002 are more alike. And we are going to show later with another figure that actually the common trend assumption do hold before 2002. Okay, so our analysis is going to be between palm producers and no palm producers in areas where you can produce palm. Okay, so how am I doing with time? Yeah. So which are our data sources? So at the end, our panel has 502 municipalities. Only 75 are original palm producers. So this is our treated group. And we are going to use data from 2002 to 2014. As I said before, we are going to open the analysis in 2 periods. We have yearly information about forced internal displacement rate. This is captured by Red Nacional de Información and SEDE. So what we have is this is the accounting of individuals that declared that they were exposed for a given municipality in a given year. Before I'm going through further, let me explain you this. So this is a self-reported data. So people, in order for people to get the benefits of being displaced or being for a forced internal displaced household, they have to go to the local authorities and they have to register in this Red Nacional de Información. Okay. Once they register, the local authorities try to make, sometimes it takes a lot of time, but they try to check that these people actually were living in the municipality that they were saying they were living, and there was actually a violent event such that they have to run away from that violent event. And that's when they finally get registered in this data set, and then is when they can start receiving benefits from the national government. So you might think that maybe forced internal displacement is overestimated because people might have incentives just to register in order to receive benefits. But actually, there is a paper by Ana María Ibáñez, once again, in 2014, I think exactly, which shows that actually people, there is a second mechanism, and it's like people are scared to be registered. So people don't want to be in any list because they don't want that list to be in the wrong hands, and then they're being target of the enemy group. Okay, so to her calculations of forced internal displacement, this our data is actually underestimated. So around 30% of the individuals that were actually displaced are in this data, are not in this data, sorry. The second variable is international price of palm oil. So we take this palm from Idris Mundi, which gets the London price of Indonesian palm oil. Now, we have identified palm crops from FEDEPALMA. FEDEPALMA is the Association of Palm Producers in Colombia and the Ministry of Agriculture. So we can identify the area of palm oil by municipality for 2002. Unfortunately, we do not have data at a smaller level. Okay, so we only have the aggregated data at municipality level because we wanted at some point to try to do a more detailed analysis, but it was not possible. Then we got some characteristics of the municipality. Obviously, we are using altitude, so we get the altitude by municipality, maximum and minimum altitude, maximum and minimum temperature by municipality, and we have some municipality characteristics that call from the database of SEDE, which is at University of Los Andes, which mainly are characteristics about population, taxation, and armed conflict. Okay. So let me go further instead of showing the descriptive statistics. So this is the evolution of the price of palm oil. And what we call the palm expansion is this first increase between 2002 and 2008. Okay. Obviously, in 2008, you have the financial crisis, so the price drops, but it recovers almost immediately until 2012, and then there is a second drop in the price. Okay. So what you will be what we are expecting is that from 2002 to 2007, which is this price increase from $500 to more than or around $1,000 per metric ton, explains part of the differential increase in FID rates in palm producing municipalities in Colombia. Also, if you think about 2008 to 2014, even though you have more variation, you have this big drop from 2011 to 2014. So you might find that actually, if there is still a rapacity effect, forced internal displacement rates fall, but you also might have a negative effect in the opportunity cost. So in this case, we are not very sure what could happen. And actually, we are going to show that all our impact focuses in the first part.
Jaime, I have two questions, quick ones.
Yes.
One is, do you control for who was in power? I mean, perhaps different presidents or different governments would look differently at this problem, and that's one. And the second one is there any evidence that land that was occupied because the price of oil was very high now has been abandoned because the price has fallen to very low levels?
So to answer your first question, so from 2000 to 2010, there was only one president over 2 periods. And the main program of palm production was from 2003 to 2007. Okay, so that's where the main subsidies were given. 2010 to 2014, you have another peace process until 2017, which is the guerrilla process. And that might change the results from 2010. But I'm going to show you that everything happened between 2002 and 2007. To your second question, actually the land, the increase in the land, let me rephrase. The total area of palm production hasn't decreased. Okay, even though prices fall, this is palm oil. The price of biofuels increased, and now that what they are doing is moving to biofuels instead of like palm oil for food consumption. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hi, Jaime. Can I ask a quick question?
Yes, sure.
Okay, what one do you want to go ahead first?
Yeah, very quickly, because that's related to the last question. So in the regression, basically we say the increase in price and raise displacement of people, right? But what you just described just now is that the other way around might not happen, that the reduction of price, people might not return. So I'm just curious to know more about this. Okay, so Brendan, it's your turn.
Let me answer your question first. So there is a return. So I don't find any significant difference between returning to palm areas and non-palm areas. I don't have the table here, but I don't find significant differences between the palm and non-palm producers, even after 2008. It's important to take into account that after 2008, there was a lot of, after 2010, there was a lot of returns because of the peace process with guerrilla armies as well. So I don't find, there is a return, but I don't find a differential return. I think that's my answer to your question.
Okay.
Thanks.
Okay, Jaime, when I look at the control group and those 3 consecutive figures that you have, looking at who we can think of to be comparison group for the treatment, what is going on there? Like I was staring at those. I looked at, I've got the paper up on a different tab, and what is it about the fact that if I have to be in a palm producing area and be below 500 meters before this 2002 kicks in? So in the pre-period,
so I think
it's kind of curious, no?
So I think I was shocked as well when the first time we did the exercise. I think the main thing is that when you take off the municipalities above 500,000 meters, you are literally taking out all the big cities. Okay, so the main cities in Colombia are all in the mountains. Okay, apart from Barranquilla and Cali, they're all in the mountains. So you are taking out the main urban areas. The second thing I think is like you get all the areas that were part of the conflict between paramilitaries and guerrilla forces. Okay, so you get all these valleys, the valleys in the north and the valleys in the east, where there were a lot of power between both forces. So that's why I think like the force intermittent displacement actually really match before 2002. And just coming back to this graph, I think what we are capturing is that even so after 2002 both fall, but the fall in the palm producing municipalities is smaller. And if you see this, what we are capturing is these differentials here in these years. Yeah, sure.
The difference between those is your treatment.
So
right?
I think they match much better for these 2 reasons. The first one is you're taking all the main urban areas. You are taking the mountains, you are taking the urban areas off. And the second one is that you are taking all these like valleys, the North Valley and the East Valley, where the confrontation was very strong between the 2 forces.
So the argument is you're now able to compare apples with apples rather than apples with oranges.
That's our main argument.
Okay. Thanks. Cheers.
Okay, so let me show you my results. How much time I do have? So obviously, when we have received this comment before, and at some point we tried to do some regression discontinuity analysis, and we are using this regression discontinuity analysis only as anecdotal, not like initial evidence. Basically, because the regression discontinuity itself does not capture the income effect. Okay. Also, let me just show you this figure in order to focus. If you here in the right-hand side, you have the forced internal displacement rate from 2002 to 2007, And here is the minimum altitude with respect to 300 meters above sea level. Why 300 meters and not 500 meters? What happened in Colombia is that there is a very strong correlation between altitude and temperature, because this is a tropical country. And then you don't have too many municipalities that are between 300, that are above 300 meters, and also get the requirement of 26 degrees Celsius. Okay, so actually there was a discontinuity in palm production, was around 300 meters and not 500 meters. And then you see that there is a differential FID rate between just at the border, between 300 meters and 500 meters, although it's very noisy. And it is very noisy because when you move the bandwidth, you are taking out one municipality, sometimes 10 municipalities. So our estimates were extremely noisy. Second, we cannot really use a fuzzy regression discontinuity, basically because the fuzzy regression discontinuity will be the altitude, for example, explains palm production explains FID rate. But actually, our mechanism is the opposite. Our mechanism is like you need forced internal displacement in order to increase power production. Okay. Nevertheless, it is weak evidence, but still you still have this jump. It's significant for 2002 to 2007. It is more noisy for 2008, 2014, and is not significant anymore. So that's why we are not using this regression discontinuity as our main estimation strategy. But let me go to our main estimation results. So once again, this is my equation. The equation is our parameter of interest is this alpha one, which is the interaction between the price of palm oil and those municipalities that have palm before 2002. Okay. So the first column is a simple, so in the first column, I don't have municipality fixed effects. And this is a simple difference when you have palm producers, the price as the treatment, and the treatment times the treated group. And you already have this significant effect. However, our favorite estimation from 2002 to 2007 is the second column. In the second column, it's exactly the equation before. You have here municipality level controls, you have VR fixed effects, municipality fixed effects, and what you find is a significant effect of 0.42 standard deviations. So once again, what we're saying is 1% increase in the price of palm oil in the GRT increases by 0.42 standard deviations. The FID rate in those municipalities that have palm crops before 2002 with respect to those municipalities that did not have palm before 2002. Column 3 is just to show that actually when we include all other municipalities in the same departments, you still have the positive effect. The point is that the comparison is not cleaner, and that's why the coefficient is weaker. Now, this is from 2002 to 2007. When we do the regression from 2008 to 2014, even though we find the negative effect that you could expect because of the negative shock in the price, the effect is not significant anymore. Okay? And then you might see that maybe here, if something, the opportunity cost was stronger than the rapacity effect. However, it's not significant anymore. And our main assumption is that from 2002 to 2007, the main difference between the two periods are the institutions. The presence of paramilitary armaments, there is no presence of paramilitary armaments in the second period. Okay? This is another way to show our results. So this is the difference between FID rates between palm and non-palm producers from 1994 to 2014. So this is another way to show that actually our common trend assumption holds. So before 2002, even though there were some changes in 2000 that might be worrying us, there was no significant difference between the two types of municipalities. However, when the prices start to increase for 2004, 5, 6, and 7, even 8, you have a significant difference between palm producer municipalities and no palm producer municipalities with respect to their FID rates. That effect goes to 0 after 2008. Okay. Now, we divide our analysis by region because different regions in Colombia may have different institutions and may have a different palm oil expansion. And actually what we found is all the effect focuses or concentrates in what we call the central and east area. So the central area is actually the area between the Andes mountains. So there is a space there between the mountains. And the east area is the border with Venezuela. Here the coefficients are stronger, so it's 1.11 standard deviations and 1.2 standard deviations. However, for the Pacific and the Caribbean regions, we don't find anything. Why we don't find anything in these two regions? How I'm doing it? Oh my God, I'm running out of time. So basically, we don't find anything in these two regions. In the Pacific, because in the Pacific there was a decrease in the area because there was a crop disease. And in the Caribbean, actually, the expansion was more in the extensive margin than in the intensive margin. So the area increased more in new municipalities than in the old municipalities. Now, the main idea behind is that there is land conflict, okay? So our hypothesis is that the violent strategy works better when land is better distributed. Why? Because if land is in the hands of very small farmers, it's easy to scare them off and buy cheaper. And second, the violent strategy works better when land ownership is more informal, okay? And that's exactly what we found. So we take there is an estimation of the Gini index for land concentration in 2000, and we divide that Gini index in quartiles, and we found that actually all the effect is in those municipalities in the first quartile, so when the land was better distributed. So our idea is that the effect of the price of the income shock is lots stronger when there was availability of small lands to be bought. We do the same with an index of formality. So this is the proportion of lands that have official registration. And we find that the big effect is in the second quartile. So it's when around 16% of the lands did have a registration. So maybe what happened in the first quartile is that there was actually not even a strong owner that owns something. But when 16% of the lands have land registration in 2000, we find that all the effect concentrates there. So what we're saying here is that the availability of lands and the informality of lands actually explain the effect. The paramilitary link. So we divide by the presence of different armed groups. AUCE are paramilitaries, FARC and ELN are guerrilla groups. And we showed that when there was paramilitaries in 2000, the effect is strong and significant. When there were no paramilitaries in 2000, the effect was not significant at all. Actually, the effect is significant when there was no FARC in 2000. So you might be that these are the regions that they were governed by the AUC. And actually with ELN, there was no difference between regions with and without. In both regions, the effect is significant. How much time do you have, Marcelo? Sorry.
I would say extra 10 minutes. If you can do 5, and then you can, so if you can do X, then you have 10 minus X for additional questions.
Okay, so let me show, this is something that I think, let me show this. So we want to estimate the link between palm violence and displacement. Okay, so the idea is that you have an income shock, that income shock creates violence, and that violence is the one that displaces people. So what we try to do is to use first to check their correlation between FID rates and some violent indicators, as Ibanez in 2008, but also wanted to see what kind of violence reacts to international prices. So this is exactly the same specification. What we change is that the outcome variables are different violent indicators. So this table is too small, but I'm sorry for that. But basically, what you find is a lot of correlations between different violence indicators and different for different regions and FID rates. But let me go to this one, and it's when we focus in violence from sorry. So in this table, we focus in violence from EUC. And then when you take paramilitary violence, obviously in municipalities where you see, and central is when the effects were stronger, you start to find that there is a very strong correlation between pound prices. So this is exactly the same specification, pound prices and violence. Specifically, you see that the clashes with public forces, which are mainly in the rural areas, increase when the price of pound increases in the central east area and in areas where you have AUC. When you take only the areas that they have AUC and you take only the violence from AUC of paramilitary armies, you start to find more correlations or more significant correlations. But what we did at the end was you might think that this strategy is not to use one type of violence, but what you want is to scare people off. So what we did is to create a principal component index using the violence indicators that we have for all actors and for AUC violence only. And then you see a very strong correlation. So first thing, this index explains strongly FID rates in all municipalities and in areas with AUC, but also the index, specifically in the areas with AUC, reacts to pound prices to changes in the pound price. Okay, just one last thing, intensive versus extensive margin. So we try to investigate what was the effect of the intensive and extensive margin. So we divide municipalities that have palm cultivation before 2002 and municipalities with palm cultivation in a given year, and then multiply both by the price. Column 1 is our main specification. When you think about column 3, you see that all the effect is actually in those municipalities that have palm before. The municipalities that start to crop new palm, actually they have a negative coefficient. So you might think that these new lands in new municipalities, they might have actually a positive effect in the labor market. Once again, everything focused in the central and east regions. Yeah, I think I can finish now here. So wrapping up, we find evidence that from 2002 to 2007, a positive income shock has a positive effect or increases FID rates in palm producing municipalities. Back on the envelope calculation says that this increase from 2002 to 2007 in the price might actually explain 7% of the total displacement on the palm producing municipalities. The effects aligns strongly with the paramilitary armies. We found evidence of the land conflict as driven force. We actually want to compare our results with the results of Manotas and Hidalgo. Once again, on saying that this balance between opportunity cost and rapacity effect depend on local institutions. What is next? I'm working very hard I'm not gonna say very hard, but I'm working on a model of capacity constraints. I think it's the best way to explain or to give like a more stronger framework to our results. And we are trying to collect data on labor market effects. Unfortunately, the information for employment is not available from 2002 to 2007, or it's not easy to get because at that time there were not many surveys for palm producers. But we are trying to find ways to see in some level if there were some labor market effects. Whew, thank you.
Great job, Jaime. Any further questions? We have about extra 5 minutes slackness.
I've got one question, Jaime.
Yeah.
The way that you pitched this at the end was that we've got the prices going on and you've got the different diff. And you showed us at the beginning your FID equation. And the way I was thinking about it at the end is that's kind of like the reduced form. And then when you showed us the violence index, that's kind of like the first stage. So okay, can I think about it this way? Can I think about like a DAG or think about like causal mediation analysis where you've got a price shock going on and the channel or the mechanism goes from price shock to violence to forced displacement?
So we are trying to do something like that.
Because if that is the case, then you just do a diff and diff as your IV, right?
So I think the diff and diff is the reduced form. I agree with you. We discussed with Sebastián about using the price as a shock on violence. Also, we are afraid that even so that there is a rapacity effect and opportunity cost effect, we are not capturing all the effect of the income shock. So we are afraid of the exclusion restriction doesn't hold completely, because that income shock might affect other things and not only the violence in one municipality.
Got it. So if there was only a rapacity effect, then it would be okay to think about this, and our exclusion restriction would probably go through. But given the fact that there are these two countervailing forces, maybe there's other stuff going on in terms of the income effect. All right, got it.
That's what so I think that comes from my previous experience with the coca prices, that when you think about an income shock, thinking about exclusion restriction is very difficult. We try to do this composition analysis, but we're still unsure about how to disentangle exactly the rapacity effect from the opportunity cost effect. But I do agree with you that the diff and diff is a reduced form way to see this.
Okay. Cheers, Jaime. Thanks.
Cheers.
Any more questions? 2 minutes to go.
So, hi, Jaime, sorry, I had to leave for a little while, but I came back. I was wondering, I think it would be interesting to know whether these, the owners of these lands, these producers, who are they, whether they changed hands when these shocks occurred. I mean, I guess that is probably difficult to find, but maybe to establish, because your claim here is rather strong, right? Why would this positive shock increase, conflict and increase militia activities? So there must be.
So I'm trying to get information about land ownership. So we have this aggregated index of the Gini index that we have another estimation in 2010. We don't find any differential effects because we wanted to show that. But we are trying to get data on land ownership to see if the problem of that data is that from 2002 to 2007 is very poor. It's better now, but we want to see any kind of differential effect in land ownership. And actually, there are new cases about people trying to get back their lands. So maybe, even though it's not aggregation, maybe want to show some evidence that in those areas there are more people claiming their own lands.
Okay. Yeah.
But that's a very good idea. We talk about it, but we still don't have the data to properly show it.
Mm-hmm. Okay, because you would expect that it would become more concentrated, right?
So the estimator doesn't. You see a small increase in concentration, but it's not significant for the non-population.
It would also be very interesting to see whether the ownership of this land is foreign, or the foreign part has increased along the way, which I would not be surprised. And
we're trying to get data on land ownership. I think that will close the idea very nicely.
So if there's no more question, we thank Jaime for his time. And if you want to open your mic and do a collective clap, that can close the session. To the count of 3. 1, 2, 3, yeah. Hey.
Thank you very much.
And your bonus is to publish it top now.
Thank you very much for everyone. Thank you for the invitation. This was very, very, very nice.